I'm Mark Gagan, and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go. Pick and choose your own best-of-breed insurtech and data providers with Advantage Go's ecosystem. I'm really pleased today because after almost 4 years of trying, I've finally managed to get someone from the Arch Capital group of companies onto the show. Arch's appetite to make the most of market opportunity and react quickly to a lack of the same has led to long-term outperformance that speaks for itself. That's perhaps just as well in a business that is really quite media shy for such a substantial and well-regarded public company. Numbers only tell a small part of the story, and that's why I'm delighted to welcome Hugh Sturgess, President and CEO of Arch Insurance International, to the show. Hugh's division is a global operation that encompasses everything that Arch does in insurance outside of North America. It stretches from the London market to Bermuda and from the UK regions to Continental Europe and Australia. The business has grown many multiples in the harder market of the last 4 years and now writes over $2 billion in premium and employs 1,000 people. Hugh has been with Arch for 19 years, so is steeped in the Arch culture and way of doing things. As such, this podcast isn't just a guide to the opportunities Arch is seeing in the specialty insurance markets in London and beyond. It definitely is that, but I think if you listen carefully, you can learn a few of the little things that add up to make a business like this outperform over long periods in many different market situations. And Arch may be a little media shy, but Hugh certainly isn't. This is as fun and lively a conversation as I have had with anyone in a long time. Enjoy the podcast. Hugh, welcome to the Voice of Insurance.
Thanks, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
It's really good sitting here on a sunny afternoon in your office here in London. Why don't you introduce yourself so anybody who doesn't know you? Tell us a bit about your career today, how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Hugh Sturgess. I'm a Canadian by birth, also a British citizen for other reasons, but I've been with Arch for 19 years. So that's most of my career story is on the Arch side.
So that's nearly all of Arch's story as well, isn't it?
It's about 80% of Arch's story.
Yeah, Archford only was a couple of years old when you started.
That's right. I joined Arch Canada as Arch Canada started about 5 years into the Arch story. And we started in London about the same time as Canada, so 2004. And it's been kind of a wild ride since then. I was the CEO of the Arch Canadian operation and left there in 2018 to come here in Jan 1, 2019. And it's been a pleasure and it's been a really entertaining ride for the last 5 years.
So you were an underwriter, but what class of business did you underwrite?
D&O.
D&O?
Yeah.
Right,
I know that comes with baggage, I suppose. But yeah, as a D&O underwriter, it's an interesting
it just marks you out to probably have a slightly above average IQ, I would say.
I don't know about that, but it's...
Certainly used to be in the early days. I think that, would say, well, you could, at least you understand a balance sheet.
Yeah, there's a financial mindset. Yeah, I started my career at RBC Capital Markets in the early 2000s, and there was a phase when a lot of D&O underwriters came in from the banking world, and I was maybe part of that little migration.
So tell us all about Arch Insurance International.
Sure, yeah. So this platform, Arch International, is about $2 billion in premium, and it's everything non-North American underwriting operations.
It's amazing. So it's a genuinely global operation.
It is a fairly global operation in terms of the risk that we underwrite in the substance. Correct. I suppose the sun never sets on this operation, if I can steal that sort of turn of phrase.
British, yes.
It does. It is quite British. I mean, it's got a British headquarters, so that makes sense. But effectively, those operations, they're in the sort of Anglo countries, right? So you got Bermuda as part of our system. We have an office here in London. We have 12 offices around the country here in the UK. And then we do have an office in Dublin that represents our European operation, and finally in Australia. Then last year, we opened offices in Paris and Madrid. So we're doing our part to sort of bring that Arch angle, I suppose, to the geographies outside North America. It's a fun challenge.
There's a lot of businesses, isn't it? And I suppose different balance sheets as well.
It's not so many different balance sheets.
A lot of regulators.
It's manageable. A lot of regulators, perhaps. Yeah, a lot of regulators. A lot of markets, a lot of good specialty markets to be able to sort of create differentiation and value proposition. And we like that. I mean, we enjoy that challenge.
And how many people is that?
It's just about 1,000 people.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot more than I mean, 2018, it was 180. So it's been an expansive period, a couple of acquisitions, 2019, but it's mostly organic growth.
So if I was walking down Fenchurch Street and I bumped into a broker, so what about Arch International? How would you like them to then describe it to me?
So I think one of the anecdotes when I first arrived was there was some question as to whether Arch had a syndicate in the London market. So I think we're happy that we've changed that narrative, Mark. It's a real turnaround. I think what we want to be in that one kind of sentence snippet from a broker, we'd want to be solving problems. We want to be known for that corner of the business that is technically, analytically astute and responsive. So not so analytical that we can't answer the question of actually placing the business, and not so customer service oriented that we can't actually figure out the answer to the problem. So does that answer the question?
Yes. I'm sort of empathizing there as a former broker would be this. Just, you don't really want to go and get a lecture from someone when you need a line.
Right. A lecture and a decline.
Or you want to quickly decline so I can get on and see someone else.
Precisely, yeah. So we try to be passionate about that analysis, but also really quick to triage and really clear about our appetite. So that's the thing that we probably changed the most 5 years ago when the hard market sort of started to roar up, was if you're not defining your appetites and living by them, then you're doing a disservice to the system and to the efficiency of the whole London market.
Yeah, and being consistent as you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing applies in Bermuda, Australia, and Dublin, and across Europe. I mean, that's where we're trying to get to.
And obviously Arch, I mean, it's been illustrated when this market changed, Arch changed, appetites changed, obviously, much more reinsurance. And obviously these are not things that you can talk about. But within that, how much have you flexed? If you asked anybody who looks at the insurance market and the global reinsurance market, I would say, what about Arch as well? They're really good at reacting well to the market and actually changing and sort of practicing what they preach and say, well, when it's good, we will write more. Are you similar in that kind of style?
Yeah, as you said, the financial information shows the tail of the tape.
It's all there in the results. It's completely in black and white.
So what I've tried to measure is, what is the typical growth rate you would have achieved just on rate, just on minor dislocation in rate? And what's the growth rate you would achieve if you work at every solution providing possibility in front of the brokers? And for us, in the hardening market, that meant bringing on new products and teams. So we entered the contingency market. We entered the sort of warranty and ancillary auto products market, and we really increased our presence in the terrorism market in 2022. Each of those is growing beyond what the rate environment's going to give you. And to articulate it, we had about a $400 million operation here in 2018, and that number $2 billion is closer to what we represent at the end of 23. So you're quintupling in that span. I think the market would have given you 2.5 times growth if you just
sat here.
With
your arms folded.
Yeah. So that extra work was worth it.
Because it's a good market, and I suppose that's the time to do it.
If you play that remediation game and do it well and do it sincerely, then your turnaround is faster and your capacity is ready to remobilize.
And I suppose, where do you feel your place within that Arch Capital group?
We're essentially, alongside our reinsurance colleagues, we are the hub for the London market, which, as you know, probably more than most, is so central to the thesis of writing P&C insurance, especially specialty classes. So that's our role, and to fully exploit the opportunities that are here and to help our broker partners along. We think we can continue to do that, and we think we continue to grow. I mean, the hard market and the soft market, that's not the only part of the story. There's a lot of plot twists in the in-between. So that's our role. Now, that's the London market piece. The regional piece is, can we bring a specialized solution to the regions? The Bermuda piece is actually our most mature office. That started at the very, very beginnings of Arch in 2001. I think it was literally January 2002. And if I look at that, that's a mature operation, but it has grown 3 or 4 times over the course of the hard market. Australia, another retail market that requires some specialized strategies, and then France and Spain. So we're now building out that international platform, as we started out talking about. That's our responsibility on behalf of.
And in France and Spain, so will you be building a bigger network? Are you kind of done? France, Spain, or as well? There's 2 other big countries in the EU that I could think of.
Yeah, we didn't start with population base or GDP. We started with the concept of, where can we compete? Where do the brokers need the best and most differentiated solutions?
And is it that you can actually find the person that you think, I really would like to hire them?
Fundamentally, I think the most interesting challenge, and the one we've enjoyed the most, is finding teams and people and meeting new personalities and new cultures who bond to the Arch way of doing things, but bring their own kind of personal national culture to it, or personal culture to it. I was out in Paris last week, and it's a joy to see that Arch brand extend to new geographies. I mean, that's personally for me what I take away from.
And is that strategy, that's a bit like your UK regional strategy, bringing some of the specialist products that a regional broker can't access?
It's different products. And in Europe, it's a focus on cyber and then a focus on long tail. So there'll be casualty business probably next for us. And we've already written some there just in the last 2 quarters. and then ultimately think about the long tail lines first in that sort of build out as we go along. The UK regional, it's a commercial combined, primarily a property offering, but with some good casualty and motor pieces to it. So it's different products, but yeah, always thinking more on the specialized end of the spectrum, I suppose.
So we'd expect you to be growing that network and see more press releases about new office openings coming up.
Yes, I think ultimately that would be our goal. We don't have a mandate here, Mark, to say we should have offices in every country in Western Europe. That's not the point. The point is, can you bring a value proposition that ultimately produces an underwriting profit? And where we can judge that in advance, then that's what we're looking for.
In terms of that London Market Group segment, a lot of international global insurance groups, their London Market operational part of its role is to be that kind of crucible for new products, for sort of tell me all the new crazy stuff this London market's getting up to, and we can kind of share it with the group, that kind of thing. Do they think you're sort of the guys in the white lab coats with the pointy heads?
I think we probably have our fair share of representation of white lab coats all across the group. So I don't want to say that there's a particular concentration here, because I think our reinsurance colleagues are pretty well known for innovation, for instance. So for us, the London market isn't necessarily the only place you can innovate, in my mind. We've done our fair share of innovation in the sense of, we've really made a stab at growing the intangibles, the sort of intellectual property space over the last 6 months since we acquired a business in that space. So I don't know if this is the only place we do it, but we certainly are willing to experiment as long as there's a thesis that makes sense. And I don't want to invite 1,000 submissions for quote unquote new products that are just really repackaging of less understood liabilities.
I suppose at least here there is infrastructure that is set up for that. And obviously within Lloyd's now, we've got some specific categories. You'd say, well, you are being given the green light to do.
Having started my career outside the London market, I can tell you, the intellectual capital that exists here to be able to execute on a highly specialized new product, I haven't seen it anywhere else. So that's the advantage. And it's thrilling to watch new products kind of blossom through this market. And so, yeah, do we want to be part of that? Absolutely. It's certainly part of the thesis of being here and having this responsibility.
Where are you most happy, say, within the London market and then within your global purview? Which kind of classes where you most geared up?
Well, lines of business, they're sort of like children in the sense that you love them all.
You have
equally,
your favorites.
But in different seasons, there's opportunities, and we underwrite 19 classes of business and then a few more sort of hybrids in the UK regional space. I would say right now, the classes that we build leadership positions in have a special aura to them within our business because we weren't leadership focused for many, many years in the history of this London market business. And having established leadership in casualty, contingency, terrorism, healthcare, A&H, having bona fide leadership now, that's a totally different relevance and presence. And a good amount of effort is going into growing those. So it's not a hard versus soft market question. It's we can grow this on the basis of the intellectual capital that we have in-house and the ability to service brokers and the reputation we have for doing so.
Sorry to interrupt in mid-flow, but this is just a reminder that you could be advertising right here, right now, and getting your message directly into the ear of key decision makers in the insurance industry. And you'll be doing it while they're absolutely in listening mode. The podcast is the medium of the future, and so is audio advertising. Contact me on mark@thevoiceofinsurance.com, and I'll do everything I can to get you started.
Because, of course, it's not just about hiring a few star underwriters. Of course, you have to have a really good claims team and all the other things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've always had those claims teams. I think what we've done over the last couple of years is just found the right channels to get the feedback that's appropriate from our clients, from our brokers on, is the claims team doing what you expect of them? And skillfully, the answer is that yes, they are. And we're getting good feedback. The Grace Church survey, things like that are giving us the data points that at least give us the sense. But we're always waiting for the brokers to say, hey, you've got to build on this strength and that strength. But we're in a pretty good position. You can't just build a leadership position by hiring 2 underwriters. You build a leadership position by shoring up the claims and the operational side as well.
So if you're viewing those 19 classes as children, which are the ones that came
favorite?
home with a gold star from their teacher and which kind of, got a note saying you need to come and see the principal?
It's a good question. And touche for structuring it around the way that I answered with an analogy. Even for the lines where we don't lead, that doesn't diminish the opportunity. It's just the format of which we reach that opportunity. And truthfully, we're not built to lead U.S. property offerings. In fact, we write very little U.S. property here.
Well, presumably, somebody else in your group does.
Yeah, a number of other groups do it, and they do it very, very well. So it's just a degree of focus. And for the underwriters who aren't so much leaders, their opportunity to cycle manage is different. Their opportunity to watch the market trends and to innovate is maybe a little bit different. And that we enjoy. We enjoy that agility. We still lead a good amount of marine business. We still lead a good amount of energy business. It's not 70% of the portfolio.
Okay. And what about overall deal flow submission? Obviously, in the last few years, we've had some really strong deal flow coming into London from all over the place. Do you think that's peaking, or do you think we've still got more to go? Coming to the London market, at certain points in the cycle, there are just more submissions because other markets are shut down. It's
structural, right? Yeah, it's
other markets are less favorable, less easy, and that stuff has to get spun out somewhere, and it spins out to London.
That business, like you say, statistically has to flow back into domestic markets as people start to reconvince themselves that they can actually underwrite that business. Whereas
at least they rebuild their capital even, and at least the appetite.
Yeah, some of it's capital, some of it is, convincing home office that, yes, I can write this in Australia or Canada locally.
And of course, that local market, convincing their reinsurer that they can continue to back them.
Precisely. So I think it's a slow trend of losing those submissions. I don't think it's going to be overnight. And honestly, when you build it into that intellectual capital the London market possesses, we're still very much in control of our own destiny in the sense of what that means for premium volumes and what that means for the reputation of the London market. So the collective underwriting capabilities here are still hugely impressive in the sense of maintaining relevance. And it's just really up to us. So can we be efficient? Can we be responsive as a group, as a community of underwriters? So naturally, the submissions will need to decline, Mark. But ultimately, I wouldn't concede that necessarily that means that we've sort of passed peak relevance of the London market in its role.
Do you think maybe some of the technological side of things, that things are finally improving, that it's easier to stay relevant, and also if we can keep the cost down, that we can be more responsive and all those things, and we can be more relevant?
Well, the promise of the technological changes that are sitting in front of us over the next 5 years solve the problems of the last 70, as far as I can tell. I haven't been in this market for 70 years, but you can tell where the inefficiencies are and how they'll get solved. And a lot of the technology that now is being put in front of us starts to look like a real efficiency game changer. That's promising, but it requires a degree of collaboration and a ton of execution. And we're in the execution phase, and I think we're watching that with Blueprint too.
Yeah. We've seen a few delays, but sometimes I think we kid ourselves that's going to be really simple, and it turns out it's never quite as simple as you think. And also because, of course, you have to do it in a very conservative way because you don't want to switch the whole London market off because you switched over to a new system that turns out didn't work.
Yeah, we would prefer not to switch the whole London market off at any point. The truth about the technology, and we've been quite obsessive about this in our digital partnerships, so where these opportunities are popping up, we've thought more about execution than the sort of fancy nature of some of the technology or the fancy nature of some of the underwriting content. It has to be executable. And I think when we talk about how we trade information, there are acronyms and euphemisms that get used in every meeting, and they have different definitions. So we're thinking more about, okay, getting underneath that, how do you actually close something out and start producing a premium? And we've just recently had some success launching a platform for instant quote bind for our contingency business called Arch IQ. And now we can build new products onto that. I'm relieved that the execution worked out. We knew the concept was sound, but ultimately it has to work. And an amazing proportion of these things just don't reach the customer or aren't adaptable or aren't usable or user-friendly. That's something that I think this whole market probably needs to adapt to pretty quickly.
Get into the habit of doing one small thing and then doing another small thing and then doing another small thing. And then you look back in 10 years and think, wow, we managed to get this far, but we did it probably in smaller steps than we think. It wasn't just a big bang.
Correct. And some big bangs were necessary.
Yeah.
And one or two that everyone knows about.
I suppose, going from steam to electricity is a big bang. And there's no sort of non-painful way of doing it. You can't sort of gradually do it. Well, you maybe can, but
yeah.
I don't know. But
there's no halfway point between the two, right? That's the truth of it, right? You can't have a hybrid so much.
Absolutely not. Obviously, more recently, you've got a split stamp with the syndicates, let's say the old Barbican syndicate and the Arch syndicate. What's behind that? Is that a sort of tidying up?
So post-acquisition in late 2019, you can imagine the timing of that. The market hadn't yet rolled into the changes that occurred throughout the middle part of 2020. And having the split stamp on the insurance side between 1955 and 2012 gives us some flexibility. And when you think about flexibility in this context, think about it as how do you meet future broker client need in terms of capacity? And we feel like the split stamp gives us a little bit of flexibility. So we're offering that third-party capital vehicle that says you can participate in 2012. And if as we want to grow line size or we want to grow capacity as we go forward, that's to do so. We can easily do that in 2012, but this is just another strategy to get to the same outcome and possibly even more powerful and empowering for the brokers as they need capacity in future years. That makes sense?
It's just that, you can offer them more capacity, I suppose, if they need it. I mean, that's helpful.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, it's a bit of an optionality on the future and what we need for the market 5 years from now.
And as you mentioned about third party there, so obviously that's the other thing that's available here that can be plugged in. And I suppose it's something Arch as a group in the past has availed itself of at different times. And I suppose, again, so it sounds like culturally it doesn't sound like it's something that's ever off the menu.
No, exactly. It's a good strategic alternative to have, yeah.
Because it's always a good thing to enhance your position in the marketplace if a broker needs a bigger line and you can help marshal a bigger line because you are marshalling someone else's capacity as well as your own, then that's got to be a good thing because you're solving the broker's problem. And at the same time, you can make some fee income while you're at it, which is obviously a nice thing.
You said it better than I could. So thank you for that.
Obviously, I suppose one of the other things, if I was talking about Arch as a group, if someone said, who are the real casualty experts? I'd say, yeah, those Arch guys, they know what they're talking about. Died through your business. You've got some really deep knowledge and understanding of casualty. And I suppose casualty over the last 18 months has probably been one of the biggest points of debate in insurance and reinsurance globally. Where do you stand on this debate, Hugh? Where are we now as an expert?
So the focus of this business unit that's underwriting out of London and the UK regional casualty and the small amount of casualty we write in Australia, we write a substantial amount in Bermuda, but the focus of this London market, which is most of it, is international non-US casualty. So I don't want to disappoint you with an answer that doesn't speak to US trend, but we have grown that international casualty component from low double-digit millions to almost tenfold or whatever. It's a big growth factor. We like that class of business. We believe the rates have held up pretty well. We think the pricing discipline is still there. We think the trend is measurable and understandable. And therefore, that's a green class for us. So I think that probably answers that sort of 18-month question.
Your rate is ahead of trend and that's okay.
Exactly. And so not speaking too much about the US side of the business, so apologies for the disappointment on that, because I think that's the golden nugget everyone's kind of looking for, isn't it? Which is to unlock that. And I wouldn't want to comment on that simply because I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert on it.
Okay, well, you'll have to just leave me forlorn here.
I apologize.
You'd already mentioned about those regional and mid-market offerings, and it's really interesting to have a business of the scale of Arch globally, but then to be offering commercial combined in Manchester or whatever, It's really, really interesting because there aren't many groups that are right up in specialty and reinsurance, and also with the customer, you can literally go and walk around their shop and you can go and meet them in the street. Do you think that's going to develop more? Because obviously that's a very nice high volume, low limit, hopefully much lower volatility type business. And it's a nice thing to have in a portfolio where there's a lot of very specialist things with very big lines and potential for volatility. Yeah. It must be a nice thing to have. Is that something that you want to grow to become a bigger sort of foot in your stool?
Leg in the store, yeah. So that regional business, so we acquired it, just to trace a bit of the history, acquired at the very beginning of 2019.
Yeah.
And it has already really outgrown our expectation, at least what we had tracked on it. Historically looking, the compounded growth has been about 20% per year since we bought it. It has produced a wonderful brand at a time that the regional business was really looking for an alternative. And that's really the explanation for the growth. And the team has done an excellent job of underwriting and selecting and servicing the things that are kind of core to the Arch way of doing things. So it's already kind of beaten our expectations from a growth perspective. Will it grow more? Yeah, I think under the right market conditions, it'll absolutely grow more. And you made the point yourself, which is it is a stabilizing leg to a different volatility behavior that comes out of the London market or out of Australia and certainly out of Bermuda, where it's a little more predictable, it's a little bit flatter, and the rate changes are correspondingly not quite so dramatic. But it's an excellent business. And we intend to continue to grow it. That's a very competitive market at the same time. And a lot of those competing brands have recovered, but we have a following. We have a wonderful set of broker partners. So there's still plenty of runway there. It's an absolutely huge market. So if you can bring a differentiated solution, that's the challenge we're always trying to answer for. Regardless of geographic location or channel like that, we feel quite empowered to kind of look at different channels.
And again, the whole of Continental Europe as well, where you could be doing more of that.
Yes, absolutely. And ultimately, that would be the hope and the intention would be to do similar things like that. But Europe is also notoriously difficult to accomplish and achieve that.
Yeah, no, you're talking to a Spanish insurance broker of the 1990s, and I'd say it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
it was never easy. We've spoken a bit about digital distribution already, but I think you couldn't be sitting anywhere in 2024 without talking about AI. Are you excited or terrified about what's happening? And there's so many interesting things. Have you got sort of people playing with this technology, seeing what they can do with it?
Yeah, I think the approach we're taking is we'd like to be aware of the possibilities and able to deploy it if it's going to make a material difference. At this point, our focus has been much more on what we call strategic analytics, which answers for how you can take different cuts of data and think about whether it's a pricing mechanism or triage of submissions, really focusing on those topics. Again, your lab coat kind of analogy, we don't necessarily have deep investments thinking about that kind of dystopian future, if you will. The focus, like I said, data that we've got, analysis that we can take. So am I scared of it? No, I don't think we're scared of it. We just want to make sure we understand it and stay in the rhythm of it as it goes forward.
So more as a smart assistant saying, hey, I've had a quick rummage through the data. I've come up with this thing, this idea that this might be happening. And then something to put in front of the underwriter to say, wow, I hadn't thought of that.
Certainly more that example than having AI make underwriting claims decisions, right, customer-facing decisions. It's an efficiency tool, and that needs to be taken with quite a bit of caution.
You said triage. So the idea of, again, rummaging through your inbox and saying, these are the 10 submissions that you're kind of overdue on. And this is the one I think you should do first because I think it's within your appetite. It looks like a good rate, looks like a decent risk, and you could probably write that pretty quickly. And that'll be one that the broker will be able to place really easily. So you might as well get back quickly and they'll sort of start triaging your workflow. Is that the kind of...
Yeah, exactly. And triaging is a form of low-hanging fruit efficiency that we should have probably all been doing 15 years ago. But now I think we can get it more adapted.
In the old London market, you just wouldn't have known. Is that, you randomly allocate your time to whichever broker's next in the queue.
Whoever's most persistent.
And it's sort of, oh, right, okay, you again.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, truthfully, that efficiency is late coming, but it didn't need artificial intelligence to fuel it. It's just more our eyes have been open to sort of the responsibility to remain as efficient as possible.
So you want to keep the people there, but you want to make them more efficient and help them come up with new ideas and be more skillful in what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche, but the people in a specialty insurance operation, people are everything.
And on claims side, do you think there's simply I've heard some people say interesting things about claims, sort of saying, well, this is the one that's most likely to get a recovery, or this is the one, or this is what these have settled for in the past. So, hey, we know we might as well proceed to settlement as soon as possible because we're never going to win this one, or that kind of thing.
My personal opinion on this one, Mark, would just be that there is still a degree of human intervention in any of those sort of automated
as an assistant, as a smart assistant saying, hey.
So, yeah, I understand there's exercises to sort of scrape language and understand what conclusions can be drawn out of word usage and so on. I've yet to see like a p-value demonstration of how efficient or effective that can be for your customer's benefit, for the benefit of your loss ratio, for the benefit of efficiency. Those are the things I think we still need to test.
What's a p-value?
Sorry, like a statistical relevance.
Right, so it's relevant. So is it statistically significant? Which I always find very hard to say, by the way.
Correct. Yeah, that is she sells seashells.
Absolutely. It shouldn't happen to a podcaster. Obviously, sitting in London, we've had these early rumblings of automation or semi-automation of the automated follow market. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's anything there for Arch or not really?
We do a degree of that sitting in 1955.
Yeah.
And similar to how we think about things like AI and that form of kind of technology, we want to stay current on it. There's pieces where we think we can participate, but we're selective. And the promise of the technology is not a guarantee of success. It's something that still needs to be tested. And there's a good degree of just understanding on the ground market dynamic that your digital interface may not necessarily give you automatically a quota share of the market, of course. So we see this in more retail markets. We write a decent amount of digital in the UK regional. We write some in Australia. The behavior is different on automating an underwriting process or automating, or at least semi-automating it. You will have different results and you need to be able to predict those. You can't just let it run for 3 years. So we're conservative, I think, to a degree in terms of where we are in the technology cycle and trying to wait a couple more years to see what can be proven. And there's plenty of opportunity, but not all opportunities are created equal.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, Mark. But
no, that's fine. No, I get that. So you're not so conservative that you wouldn't just dip your toe into the water just to say, well, I don't want to be out of this completely because I don't reject it. But I want to sort of sample this carefully, and I'm not going to drink gallons of the stuff.
In the efficient follow market, we already are participating in some of those pockets. And even some where I'd say it's a little more than dipping our toe, but with a good amount of knowledge and a good amount of due diligence. Of course, I'm going to say that, but legitimately, a good amount of due diligence on what our expected result will be.
And this was really monitoring when there is a deviation from what you expected.
Always, on every class of business, but probably twice over on the automated.
Is he just worried of being gamed by the brokers or something? Or gamed by a broker algorithm that's even more sneaky?
I wouldn't even say it's necessarily you're going to be gamed by the brokers. You get gamed by the economics. You're getting gamed by the micro and macroeconomics of offering a product at a price that may have an automated feature to it. And naturally, people will gravitate to that if it's mispriced.
Well, it's like, Saturday in the UK, you can go into bookmakers and they used to have these pre-printed odds. And then you could look at the team sheet and see that so-and-so they're throwing this cup game because they're too busy they want to focus on the league. And their whole B team has been put out. And you look at the team sheet and see that, the odds are wrong now. So it was efficient, but it wasn't very specifically efficient for this particular game. I've got that wrong.
Let's say you're that betting shop and your weekly Saturday revenue is typically, I don't know, £9,000. And then one Saturday you get £90,000 of business. Is that a good day or is that a bad day?
It's a slightly worrying day.
Yeah, exactly. So we just want to always have that component of, do we know what we're expecting when those volumes change? And do we understand the risk well enough? But that's their trade, right? I mean, I think for most people that work at Arch, if you want to understand a bit of Arch culture, that game, that diligence is what keeps people enjoying this.
I mean, I'm going to observe this with great interest because, of course, it's sort of easy to do this in a harder market because you can watch it grow. But if the market softens, then if you don't touch the dial, it should also, of its own accord, just go back to zero again. Some people might be happy about that, but we'll see what actually happens. It might be different. The markets, it might involve somebody tweaking the dial a little bit downwards and saying, well, I'll have to accept slightly lower hurdles because that's just the way the market is, right? So it'll be interesting. But then the fun thing about that is, of course, that's going to be controlled by senior management, so they won't be able to blame anybody else.
That's correct. Yeah, there's no chain.
There was no rogue underwriters and brokers whining and dining my underwriters and all this stuff.
You might get away with it blaming your IT department once or twice, but I don't think that's healthy, and I don't think it's going to happen here.
No, the buck will be stopping with the person who's in charge of twiddling the dials.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is going to be you.
It technically always stops there anyway, so
No, of course it does anyway, doesn't it? Yeah. But whatever happens, if the results are no good, then it's probably your problem.
That's true. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, no, sorry. Just a sharp intake of breath. Yeah, you're on the hot seat. I just do a podcast. You actually have to make money.
I'm getting used to it. It's been 10 years, so I'm getting used to it.
It must be really interesting, though, running this empire in which the sun never sets. Culturally, how do you make it work? You were saying before about you were in Paris or in Madrid and seeing how there's something arch about these people, but obviously there's something very Spanish about the guy in Madrid and there's something about the people in Paris.
We think of our organization as being very flat. That's a key cultural principle. So I wouldn't use the word empire, but it's
no.
But I know what you mean.
You put that idea in my head earlier.
I know. It's that sort of transnational, transcultural exercise. And our teams in Australia, our teams in France and Spain and Bermuda, there is a common chord, right? There is we have a good amount of people that have been here for a long period of time that are kind of like the cultural stewards, I suppose. And I think that's very, very important. I'm one of them. I've been here for 19 years. But 70+% of that 1,000-person employee base has joined in the last 3 years. It's a big cohort of new faces. I think if you offer them in the communications, my personal philosophy, I suppose, is if you offer them what the culture is, they have a choice. They have a choice, like, is that for me or is that not for me? We spend a lot of time worrying about what the Arch experience is and what it is to be an employee here and what that means. And it's not always easy. This is a diligent, hardworking team, but knowing what it is up front, not waiting 7 years. We do a ton of town hall sessions. We do a ton of inflow sessions when you're a new employee, you meet senior executives. It's actually one of the things I think my senior team gets a lot of joy out of is watching people come in the halls for the first time and breathe it in. And not everyone loves it, but most people have shown a tendency to want to stay. And importantly, the talent that wants to stay is usually well suited to that culture. It becomes a self-fulfilling credo, I suppose.
Yeah, and then you sort of imbue them with this, and then they're out sort of as acolytes preaching to everybody else as well,
I suppose it's less of
not
a
religion.
cult.
I'm just getting a religious.
It's less of a cult than that makes it sound
cultish
like.
empire that you're building, yes.
But there's no translation device that takes the culture and synthesizes out for 200 countries and makes it an automatic process. It's about having the right leadership. It's about recruiting carefully and recruiting for people that are open-minded about where they want to be culturally at different phases in their career. We found over the last 5 years, a lot of people, London market, regional in particular, where people were looking for this kind of firm to work for, where it was analysis and intellect going into every decision, and it was hardworking but rewarding, and there was a real sense of ownership of the outcome. That's what I think we accomplish consistently, and I think people tie to that.
That's the best definition of culture, rather than sort of putting a whole load of bullet points somewhere.
The bullet points have to talk, right? You have to walk the talk, I suppose, is more what I'm thinking about, but you have to demonstrate it. And we're just going through a process. We do have something called the Arch Experience, where we talk about the behaviors that are most important. And we're just about to go through an exercise where we identify over the last 5 years of growing that much, where individual stories and anecdotes have come up demonstrating each one of those behaviors. So we just remind ourselves that these things are actually happening on a day-to-day basis.
And I suppose it just, as a leader, it's 1,000 people. So a lot more of your day than it would have been 19 years ago, for example.
It probably is. I will give some credit to early executives at Arch, and Dino Ciordano, who recently passed, one of those people. They put a lot of time and attention into underwriting culture, employee culture in general, maybe more so than a company of that scale and proportion would have in 2000 to 2004. They put a lot of time and effort into that.
Yeah, rest in peace, Dinos.
Of course.
Yes, because we're summertime, and I was thinking of going down to Monte Carlo, and I'm thinking about many different Monte Carlo roundtables that I did. And probably the mark of Dinos would be when you assemble an amazing peer group of all his peers, all those CEOs, and how they would all just fall silent and listen to Dinos. Sometimes it was just, they were just in Dinos for 10 minutes. No one would, and me as chairman, I thought, well, actually, I need to interrupt him now because I need to get, we're running out of time and not everyone else has spoken yet. So I need to interrupt him. But it showed that was, I think, the ultimate sort of accolade, that all your peers stopped and listened to what you had to say. And simple as that. For
the role he played, the impact on this firm as well, you can imagine what that was like. It's a big loss, but
big character as well. He's sort of present,
Yeah, absolutely.
But I suppose the thing, someone like that, they're still present. That's the thing. So you still sort of say, oh, I know what Dinos would have said about this.
I suppose.
It's sort of on your shoulder.
And we're spoiled for leadership. So we've had that proliferation over the years, and I think that has maintained the culture very, very nicely.
I've run through everything that I wanted to talk about. So unless there's anything else, any parting words?
No, just thank you for the opportunity. It's great to have a conversation, and there will be challenges in the next phase of the market, but we've spent the last 5 years preparing for them. So we're excited for that.
Well, thanks very much, and come back on the show soon.
Thanks, Mark. I'm happy to do so.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this program. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com. to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry.
The Voice of Insurance is produced in association with Advantage Go. Release your underwriters to underwrite with Advantage Go's underwriting platform.
Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.